All right, go ahead and give me your name and title, please.
My name is Dan Golden. I'm a senior editor of ProPublica, and I'm the author of The Price of Admission.
So, Dan, when you first heard about Operation Varsity Blues, what was your reaction?
On one level, it was the logical outgrowth of what I wrote about 15 years ago in my book, because what I wrote about was people essentially buying slots for their children by making big donations to universities. Here again, money was overcoming merit in college admissions. The difference that surprised me was that these donors, instead of just giving money to the university, through their private college counselor, they were specifically bribing athletic coaches. So that this was a much clearer form of illegality than what I'd written about. Morally, it wasn't that different, but this seemed to take the assault on college admissions protections farther than ever before.
Rick Singer came up with the side door, but you've always known about the back door. Explain that.
That's right. The back door for college admissions was that prominent wealthy people, mostly donors, alumni, celebrities, were making big donations to universities around the time their children were applying to college. And this gave a big leg up to children from rich and mostly white families who could get in with less than stellar credentials because of their family's money. That was the back door. Now, what Rick Singer invented, what he called the side door, which was essentially families bribing athletic coaches to give their children status as recruited athletes, which is one of the biggest preferences in college admissions. So kids who weren't really any good at polo or water polo or rowing or whatever the sport might be were suddenly ushered into these schools because the coaches were vouching for them as recruited athletes. The reason the coaches were doing that was because they were taking bribes. And Singer's pitch to these families was it costs less to bribe a coach to influence admissions than it does to make a big enough gift to a university to affect admissions. You might have to give $5 or $10 million to an elite university to improve your kid's chance of getting in, but $500,000 to a coach will accomplish the same objective. I came up with the book because I was covering higher education at the Wall Street Journal at the time, and there was a very important Supreme Court case about affirmative action that I was supposed to cover. And the case involved white students who were suing the University of Michigan, saying that they'd been passed over in admissions for minority students with inferior records because of affirmative action. And what my articles in my book showed was that actually the preferences for rich white kids help more students than does affirmative action. The difference is that affirmative action is explicitly about race. The preferences that help rich white students are for children of donors and alumni and celebrities, and it just so happens that the vast majority of those people are white. And so what I showed was that there was what I called the preferences of privilege or white affirmative action that was a major factor in college admissions. And ultimately, partly influenced by my research, the Supreme Court upheld affirmative action in those cases.
Why do you suppose, all of us have been so fascinated with this case?
The reason we're fascinated by this case is that it combines two things that people care an awful lot about, which is the world of celebrities and money and the world of college admissions. I mean, this is a world where many moneyed, wealthy people are desperate to see their children get into top colleges and will do almost anything to accomplish that. Our elite colleges, we have this strange system where they only accept maybe 5 or 10% of all the students who apply, and they create this market of extremely anxious, desperate parents. And so parents love to watch anything that might tell them how they can gain an edge in getting their kid into college, or that will show them whether the system is corrupt or greedy or not. And so they're fascinated by that. And when you add into the mix the stories about these people they've seen on TV or they've read about, all the time, then it's a very seductive mix.
How do you feel about what they did?
Rick Singer was, and I guess still is, a kind of consummate con man from an early age. And I did a new chapter in my book about, just partly about Singer and his past. And I found that he was, exaggerating and selling and making things up long before he hatched this particular scheme. So I just see him as a kind of classic American type, the ultimate, con man. You have to feel somewhat sorry for the students involved. Some of them apparently didn't even know that their parents were paying the coaches, and they thought they were getting into these schools on the up and up. And that's kind of tragic. And you can only imagine how that might affect their relations with their parents going forward. I tend to, in these cases, in my book, to hold the colleges responsible most of all. I mean, they created this system where only a few anointed people out of many get in, where the stakes of admissions are high and the chances are very poor. And they created this difficult market essentially because it serves their purposes. Every time they reject a student, they look more exclusive. And they go out and market to huge numbers of people and try and elicit as many applications as possible, and then turn 90 or 95% of them down. So the colleges created these conditions, and I think they deserve most of the blame. Parents, these parents went too far, maybe to feed their own ego so they could boast that their kids were going to an Ivy League school or some other top school, but also they care for their children. And like I said, I see the students as often as victims. So I tend to hold the colleges, culpable in the larger sense. And Singer, of course, was as the instrument of it, was the culprit in the immediate sense. And of course, these coaches, some of them apparently used the money to improve their programs, so for kind of an altruistic purpose, but others didn't, and they had to know that what they were doing was wrong, and it's hard to feel too sorry for them.
If there's one takeaway from this, what would it be?
I think the takeaway is that college admissions is in desperate need of an overhaul, with protections put in to safeguard the admissions process from the taint of money and greed. Because right now you have this very combustible situation. You have very wealthy parents trying to get their kids into colleges that only accept 5 or 10% of their applicants. And so there's an enormous incentive there for these desperate parents to pursue that goal of admission by any means possible. And something has to be done to make clear that the admissions system will be based on merit rather than on money.